So the wine has been sat there for 6 days now. It's been sat there on the grape skins. Everything is in there completely. All of the grapes, all of the seeds, everything is in there still. And after 6 days, when it's sort of fermented on the grape skins all together and in there, then I need to take that pulp out, if you like. And that's why I did it in a mesh bag, because the next step is to basically drag out that mesh bag and try and squeeze as much of the juice out of those grapes as I possibly can. Now, this usually takes quite a lot of strength. I will start it off and do what I can, and then I'll bring the big guns in, because my husband is working from home today. So, because it does take quite a lot to sort of squeeze that last bit out. I should also say that why I'm wearing this fetching outfit, this very old t-shirt and a navy apron, is because it's red, deep red, and it will splash. So what I need to do is wear things that won't matter if they're splattered with stuff. So please ignore the state of my outfit. First step is to wash my hands thoroughly with soap. Ow, and hot water. Next, I'll get some sterilising solution at the ready, because I will need to sterilise things as I go. That's heavy. Right. Okay. Lid off. Now, I did actually tie this on with string so that it would stay stable. So I can take that string off now and see how difficult it's going to be. I might actually sterilise a big bowl, because I will probably want to put this into a big bowl, get it a little bit lower when I'm squeezing it, and then transfer the juice back into here. That's my plan. And I have these stainless steel bowls, which, oh, they've got a nest on the bottom. I've had them for absolutely years and years, and they are so brilliant because they're stainless steel, one piece, and they're just great. They're durable, they don't stain, well, don't seem to. They work really well, so I'm going to use this. Excuse the noise. Okay, so I have something now that is sterilised and good to go, and I can put this in it and then move the bulk of the wine off to the side, and then just work on something smaller, which I think will be easier. So, move that over to the side a little bit. Can you all still see? I do hope so. Yeah, I think you can. Right, let's try again with this. Starting to get messier and messier. Can you see? If I turn that way, it might be easier for you to see what I'm doing. I'm essentially just wringing it out of the bag at the moment, because there's juice in the top of the mesh bag before I even got to the leaves, and I want to try and keep all of the juice I can. Right. And you probably can't see, but the juice is pouring out as I'm squeezing it like this. First of all, I've got to actually get it out of the primary fermenter, which means that it'll have to be smaller to get it through the top. The other thing it's doing, because it's sort of got quite a lot of juice in it, it is spurting out of the bag. So actually having it sort of contained in this primary fermenter means that it's not squirting all over the kitchen yet. As I get more juice out of it, it'll become less volatile, shall we say. It's a good workout for the hands, actually. Good for hand strength. It's already starting to drip and make a mess. Right. That can go over there. What I'm going to try and attempt is to squeeze out sort of a certain amount of it and then put it back in the primary fermenter as I go. This might be a slightly better way of doing it, it might not, but as I say, it's trial and error to some extent, this. And it takes a while. The key thing is not to be in too much of a hurry, because it will take a while. There's probably a quicker way of doing it if you have the correct equipment, but I don't have the correct equipment. I just have my hands and a mesh bag. So I just take the slow option, really. I have seen on YouTube that you can sort of make sort of grape presses and all sorts, but really with the quantity that I do, it's not worth the bother. Well, it hasn't been worth the bother yet. So you sort of get the idea of what I'm doing. I will bring you back when I have squozen out. Is that a word? Squozen? Squeezed? Extracted. Here we go. When I've extracted as much as I can, much of the juice as I can, I will bring you back. Okay, so I have all of the wine still in the primary fermenter, but obviously I've taken the pulp out, squeezed all the juice out of it, and that now is going into one of my compost systems. I'm not putting it in my worms because I don't want drunk worms. I'm not sure if that would be good for them. And I'm not putting it in my chicken compost because obviously I don't want drunk chickens. And of course it has been fermenting on the pulp for a while, so there will be an alcoholic component in that pulp. I've got a compost system that isn't actually interacted with by any creatures, so actually if you're interested, I've got a video on this channel called, I think it's 8 Ways I Compost in a Small Garden, and you can see all my different composting systems there, and I will be putting it in the chicken poo compost system. So check that out. Anyway, so that's all there. I have 2 spare demi-johns around the corner, but I've just realised I haven't got airlocks for those 2 demi-johns. I only have this one bung, which doesn't have a hole in it, and I don't have an airlock. So, I should say, I have 4 demi-johns of wine here that actually all need bottling. I've got, this is from last year, I have 2 elderberry wines, and then the ones at the front are grape and blackberry, so it's a mix of grapes and blackberries for these 2. So they really need bottling, so that's going to be my next job, because I can't put my grape into the demi-johns without the airlocks, and the airlocks are on these 2, so it's all a bit of a shuffle. Note to self, I must get 2 more bungs and 2 airlocks for those other demi-johns, so I have 6 gallon demi-johns in total, but I only have 4 airlocks and 4 bungs, and this bung which doesn't have a hole in it, and only 1 primary fermenter, because it doesn't stay in the primary fermenter very long, just for like a week or something like that, and then it goes into the demi-johns. But all of my equipment I have got from charity shops or second-hand online, those types of things, so it's all second-hand. Apart from the airlocks. The airlocks are just a couple of dollars each, and the bungs, which I've got from a wine suppliers, but I have to order them and they have to come in the post, so I do need to get some extra ones, but I can't get them now. So The next job is going to be to bottle some of last year's wine. So this will be a classic, and here's one I prepared earlier to show you the next sort of piece in the winemaking process, essentially. So this is a little bit like topping and tailing the how to make wine. So the grape wine from this year, you've seen right from the plant, harvesting the grapes, through to this squeezing out and in the primary fermenter. The next job there is just simply to pour that into some gallon demi-johns, put an airlock and a bung on top of there and leave it for a year. You're supposed to rack it and do all sorts of stuff. I don't do that. I just bung it in and put it there, and it stays there for a year. At the end of the year, then you get the next bit, which is essentially bottling the wine and drinking it. So what I'm going to show you is the end of the process, but with a different wine, if you like. So here's one I prepared earlier, as they tell you on the TV shows. So the first job, of course, is to wash the bottles. So these wine bottles, essentially, are just your ordinary wine bottles. I mean, we bought them from the supermarket with wine in them, and then I have taken the labels off and then used them again and again and again for my homemade bottled wine. So when I finish the wine, I just hold on to them because, of course, taking the labels off is a bit of a pain and takes a little bit of time. So once I've got the label off, then they go round and around and around. So once I've finished a bottle of wine, I just rinse it out and put it in the cupboard. And then when I need to make more wine, I bring them out and wash them, which is what I've just done. They're all sitting here upside down, washed. The next thing to do with these bottles is just to pour some sterilizer in. It's the same sterilizer you saw me using earlier that I made up in a jug that I sterilized the other pieces with. I just basically use that sterilizer, I'll pour a bit in, swill it round, pour it out, put them upside down again, and then we just basically put the wine in it. So I'll get on with the sterilising and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to actually put the wine in the bottles. Okay, so we have the demi-john of, this is elderberry wine from last year. This is a key piece of winemaking equipment. It is a stool that my daughter made years and years ago when she was at school. And it has so many uses around the house, but one of its key jobs is to get the demi-john high enough so that when I siphon it into this bottle, the bottle stays lower than the bottom of the demi-john, because the siphon only works if you're siphoning into something that's lower. Well, it sort of basically keeps the flow going. So it needs to be high, which is what this stool does. So it's looking really beautiful and clear. Obviously we haven't tasted it yet, so we'll have to try that. But yeah, I need to sterilise the siphon and then get it going, which is always a bit of a mission. But anyway, we'll get... Oh, and the other thing I need to do, which I mustn't forget, is put the corks in soak, because the corks need to sort of... They don't need to soak so much, but they do need to sort of get wet so that when you put them into the bottles, they slide in easily. Okay, so I have my bottle of water here. I need 12 corks because I've got 12 bottles. There's 6 bottles to one of these gallon demi-johns. I should put a couple of extra corks in because sometimes something goes wrong with them and you need some extra ones. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, let's do that. The other thing I need to do with these corks, of course, is weigh them down, because as you can see, corks float, so I need to put a plate on top so that they stay under the water. And I'll need to put something heavy on top of it, because of course it's pushing them up. Okay, so this is my siphon. It has a little tap on the end, which is very useful for turning it off in between bottles. It has a little cap on the bottom of the other end. So this end goes in the wine and this end goes in the bottle. And this little cap actually stops the sediment going up into the siphon as much when you get to the bottom. And this I actually had to order from the UK because in New Zealand they don't have anything this useful. I think in New Zealand people make much larger batches of wine and do more in the beer sort of area. So when a friend of mine actually visited the UK, I actually got them to pick this up for me and bring it back. So I need to sterilise this first. I will want to reuse this airlock. So I'm going to sterilise this. Okay, I've just put a peg, I don't know if you can see it, I've put a peg on the top so that the siphon doesn't go all the way to the bottom, because I want to try and keep it as clear as possible. Now I need my first bottle, and this is the bit, the tricky bit. You have to suck the end to get the wine to come down. I know, it sounds a bit unhygienic, but it is how I've done it my whole life, how my parents used to do it, and actually when you look on the internet, that is a perfectly acceptable way of doing it, so that's what I'm going to do. I know, you probably can't see, but I might have to tip you down for the next one because the wine is actually now going into the bottle. So you can see hopefully see the wine coming down the siphon, and it's going into the bottle. Tastes nice so far. Okay, so that's the first bottle full. Put it round there. And I'll do the next one, but I'll just tip you down a little so you can see the bottle filling. Hopefully you can see that. Turn the little tap, and then you can, the bottle is filling with wine. You have to also keep an eye on this demi-john to make sure that you're not losing the wine. And I tip it onto the side like this so as not to get too many air bubbles in the wine. You don't want to get it sort of like slushing around with a lot of air in it. So you don't always get a full 6 bottles out of these demi-johns. There's a little bit left in the bottom, which is, it's got a bit of sediment in it. It was hard to, you can't really get that bottom part out. So this is just up to the shoulder, so not quite full. So we'll drink this one first. And then there's the sort of the sedimenty, leesy bit that's in the bottom of the demi-john. Basically just swirl that out and pour it down the sink. That's just the stuff that's come out of the wine. As the wine has been maturing, it's basically all the particles that make the wine clear, essentially, when it's finished. Okay, so this is the second demi-john of the elderberry. Looking beautifully clear, the same. So I'm going to do exactly the same with this. Right, so before I put the corks in these wines, I actually topped up the other bottle because it's all the same wine. So essentially this now is to here, and I have 11 full bottles, which I will cork. Okay, so this one I'll cork and drink soon. The next thing, seeing as I now have my free demi-johns and I have my airlocks that I need, I'm actually now going to sterilise the demi-johns and then transfer my new one, my grape wine from this year, into the demi-johns and get that going, and then I can cork these bottles. Okay, so again, bringing into play the little stool, very important. Primary fermenter on the top, and this is easier because it has a tap. So this tap, basically, I just open it and I can fill these demi-johns, which are now down in the sink, which is a great place to put them because if there's any accidents, it basically just goes into the sink, which is great. Now I'm on the marks that I've got here. I think I've got just over 2 demi-johns. If I can get 3 demi-johns out of it and basically add a little bit of water, then that will be great. I might actually make up a little bit more sort of sugar syrup and see if I can sort of boost the fermentation just a little bit on this, and then just sort of, because obviously I'll be watering it down a little bit. But I'm going to see, because I'm not exactly sure how much this is going to give me. So I'm going to fill 2 demi-johns sort of part way up, and then see what I've got left. Or I'm just going to see how it goes, basically, because I don't want to end up with 3 half-full demi-johns. So I'm just going to see how far it goes. I have these marks, as I say, but they're not terribly accurate. And I can't actually remember if these marks aren't allowing for having the pulp still in there. So we will see. Anyway, so this is much easier because basically I just hold it up to that and open the tap. And again, what I want to do is run it down the side because I don't want the bubbles. I don't want too much air in the wine at this point. It's a bit heavy though, that's the only problem. I do have some more elderberries this year, quite a lot of elderberries from the harvest, so I might put on another elderberry wine. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how we're going, so I'm going to start the other demi-john and then come back and see how much I get, because that I could fill that with a sugar syrup. I don't know, I'll just see. It's actually going to be easier now, I think, to pour this into the demi-john because these demi-johns get very, very heavy. And just looking at those, I'm not sure whether I have enough. So in the end, I decided that it would be best to have the 2 full demi-johns, and then I've just put the rest of it in here. It's quite muddy, it's got like a lot of sediment and everything in it. So I've just put it in here. I will put an airlock on it, and then I've got to decide what to do with this. What I really need is like a little bottle that I can put an airlock in sort of for leftover amounts. So I just need to put the airlocks in and put them on the ground, and that's that for this. So if you'll be following along with the making of wine, this is the point where I put the airlock in and then it sits on the floor for a year. And the bottling that I've done, the bottling, the sterilising and putting it into the bottles and the corking part, that is what I do after a year. And this is the bottle stuff is the elderberry, which I had from last year. And generally it's about a year because I need the demi-johns and I need the airlocks. So that's sort of what happens. This wine will now go for drinking, and the other 2 demi-johns I have down there also will get bottled and go for drinking this year. I have made wine for years. I started making it when I was a student. It was a really cheap way of getting wine really quickly. I used to buy the kits, make a demi-john, and then it never really got out of the demi-john. You just drank it from the demi-john. And then over the years, I've made various wines with bought produce and also a little bit from some plum trees that we had on property that we used to live on. But now, since I've moved to Cornwall Pocket Farm, I have made cucumber, wouldn't recommend. Elderberry, definitely recommend. Blackberry, yes, great. Grape wine, yet to see, but grape and blackberry seem to be quite nice. So I've got high hopes for that once it's bottled and sat for a little while. So there are all sorts of wines you can make. I mean, honestly, if you go on the internet, there are so many. That's where I got the cucumber wine, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend. But I've got several books that have wine recipes in, and I just use one of those as the base for a wine, and then I sort of adapt it based on what I've got available. So making wine really doesn't cost that much, and because the fruit and everything is free to me because I grow it, it's just water, little bit of sugar. The packet of yeast is $4.95, I think it is, and that 1 packet of yeast will do 1 primary fermenter, so that's 2 demi-johns, so that's $4.95 over 12 bottles of wine. So yeah, you work that out. But it's not a lot, as you can see. So this is actually a completely different set of wine. You can probably tell from the wardrobe change. But I didn't actually film the corking, putting the corks in the bottles last time when I did the bottling. So because I ended up splitting the video into 2, and there was an extra week grace on this part that you're watching now, I've actually been bottling another batch of wine today. This is last year's grape and blackberry. I had some grapes that were black enough on the vine last year, but they weren't as ripe as this year's grapes. So a lot of the grapes were quite green, and I ended up making grape jelly out of that, like a jam, you know, with sort of like it's a clear jam. And that was absolutely delicious because it had that little tart element, and of course with a jam you add in loads of sugar. Then I made this wine, which was some blackberries I had left over in the freezer, and also the sort of the redder grapes that were on the vine last year. So I also added some sugar to this because they weren't sweet enough by themselves to sort of ferment. They weren't in that little blue section, you remember I talked about in that last video. So I added sugar into this to bring the sugar up as well. I have to say it's very nice. I'm quite pleased with it. But anyway, so this sort of process of making wine, you've actually seen 3 different batches of wine. The first batch of wine, that was the harvesting, processing, cooking up and all that, that was this year's grapes off the vine. Then I moved to last year's elderberry to show you the sort of the bottling process and all of that. And then now I'm going to show you the corking, and this is grape and blackberry from last year. I'm hoping it's light enough and that you can see this. Oh, it's quite heavy. This is actually a corking machine that we found in an antique shop many years ago. It is clearly an antique, very old, but it works brilliantly. It's a really lovely piece of wrought ironwork, and it's very pleasant to use. And we started off, I mean, for years I made wine using these sort of modern sort of 2-handle type of things, and they're okay, but they're really hard to use. And yeah, it wasn't great for getting the corks in. This is so much easier and so much more effective. Now, it's a bit of a process. My husband actually helps me with this because it's really just quick, and it's better if you do it, well, I found it's better if you do it with two people. So he will be joining me in just a moment, and we'll bottle this wine. Now, I'm hoping you'll be able to see this, and I might turn the light on. I might turn the light on actually because it's a little dark down here. Right, how's that? I think that's a bit better, isn't it? I'm going to be turning my back to you because I'm in charge of putting the bottles in, holding the bottles down and putting them up here. The husband is in charge of holding onto the top and doing the handle. When we had the children at home, it was really fun because we all had our jobs. So one of the girls would hand me a bottle, I'd do the corking, Mark would do the handle, and then basically another daughter would take a bottle away and stack it in the right area.
Really?
A little bit, yeah. Are you helping, Maggie? Okay, ready? Are you helping? Very nice. Thank you for your help, Maggie. So now all my wines that were sitting down here on the floor that were in demi-johns from last year, they have all now been bottled and are drinkable. And what I have on the floor this year is this year's grape wine. I will be adding some more wines to that because obviously I've only got, what, two and a bit demi-johns down there. So I will be adding some more wine. What that'll be, I'm not sure. I've got a bunch of elderberries in the freezer, so it could be elderberry wine. Yeah, I think that's probably what it's going to be. We've got a whole bunch of quinces this year. Can you make quince wine? I don't know. That's definitely worth the research, isn't it? What else have we got a lot of at the moment? Well, beans, we've got lots of beans, but I'm adventurous, but I'm not trying bean wine. I do think you can make like pea pod wine and those sorts of things, but yeah, no, I'd rather eat my beans than make wine out of them. So anyway, that's me yabbering on. So I will say goodbye and cheers, and I will see you next time. Bye.